Hey, thanks for joining. What I want to go over right now is an AI agent that we created that follows up with all of the IP returns and all of the people that you actually sell before they make their first payment because we learned that that helps the policy stick a little bit better. One of the things that I really enjoy about this session is pretty simple. Not a lot of people go through each step and carefully help you build, right, or kind of wireframe some of the missing components, like where do you store the data? How does the call cadence, how you should you set up your call cadence and what algorithms to look at for doing that? I'm not going to get too much into the weeds. And honestly, one quick hack that I do all the time is you can just take the transcripts from this YouTube video and feed it to an LLM like Claude or ChatGPT or something like that. And it should be able to put two and two together and help you wireframe this exact workflow that we're going to cover. Now, there are some positives and there are some things that are missing, just as with anything could be, because everyone's a little bit different. And so, if you're an independent agent and you work part time, maybe you work 2 days a week, you're not really submitting a lot of policies. This may not be the right video for you. But if you are looking to build an agency and scale an agency, or if you already have an agency that's doing, I don't know, at least 50K a month to $25,000 in submitted premium every month, this video is really going to help you understand how to set up an automation that can help you with your back office. Every single week, like insurance agencies, they lose policies due to these IP returns and this lackluster back office support, right? Nothing against any back office teams that exist out there, but a lot of us are just using our own volition, our own agents to be responsible for keeping the policies that we write on the books. And it's not always because the clients just want to cancel right away. That's also something that gets constantly stated in final expense telesales, but it's not always true. And it's not always because the coverage is actually too expensive, because a payment got returned, right? A bank account could have changed, a draft date doesn't align with their paycheck because we deal with people who are on Social Security, that kind of thing. So these are the easiest cases to save, in my opinion. And they're the ones that are most likely to slip through the cracks, unfortunately. So today, I'm going to show you guys a system that I built that handles this automatically. It's an AI voice agent that I'm just naming Aria for whatever. It's just a made up name. You can call it whatever you want, but it's going to read your pending business spreadsheet. It calls your clients for you. It handles all of your clients' questions for you. It can even transfer them to the carrier when they're ready to pay. So it logs everything back to your AMS if you have one. And if you don't, it can literally just leave a note in a spreadsheet without a human, without an agent, without a manager or a case manager ever having to touch it. So before we talk about the solution, let's establish the problem clearly. I want to make sure that we're speaking the same language here. So in the life insurance world, what's an IP return? It's a returned initial premium payment. Maybe they switched bank accounts, maybe there just wasn't enough funds in there, maybe it was an error. Essentially, it's just a chargeback event, right? And so when that happens, the policy doesn't immediately cancel. A lot of these carriers have a grace period and they give the agency a window to recover that payment. Now, if nobody acts within that window, the policy lapses. Now, multiply that across a book of business with hundreds of active policies. If you've been in the industry for a long time, I'm sure you can think back months ago how many clients you've actually had on the books and how many clients have just magically disappeared and all these chargebacks start accumulating, right? And you've got agents that work these cases literally from a spreadsheet, manually calling down a list. They're leaving voicemails that nobody listens to. They're logging notes by hand. Maybe they don't even leave a note. They're just like, you know what? I called it. It's done, right? And we're still missing people. And so there is a cost implied to that. And it's not just the commission. Every single lapse policy is a client relationship that erodes. It's a carrier performance metric that degrades. And it's also your agency's reputation, right? A replacement sale costs 6 times more than a retention call would have cost just to keep that person on the books. This is a problem solved. We just have to automate it. Here's how the system works end to end. So first, it starts with the Google Sheets. Every agent at the agency has a pending business spreadsheet that, your upline or maybe you maintain. So tab by tab at the bottom, like if this is a Google sheet, each week it just appends a new row or a new sheet. And what we do is we look at a rolling 45 days. It looks at the client's names, the policy numbers, right? The carrier, um, the status, whether it's IP return, pending lapse, awaiting funds, if there's like an AOTA that it needs, or if it's just simply pending placement. So step one, the dialer script reads every sheet, every tab, and then it assembles a list of callable rows. And so that's already done automatically. We actually check our call history in Supabase before we begin dialing. If we already resolved it, it's skipped. And that way, like right client paid, it skips that client. It's not going to continue to call and reach out. Step two, for each callable row, we hit the AMS API. And so we hydrate the case, pull the client's phone details, all that good stuff so that the agent can refer back to any questions. If the client answers the phone and they say, yeah, thank you so much for calling. Can you check out how much my monthly payment was going to be? A lot of times that's where some of these AI agents begin to falter is it doesn't have that resource to tap into. And so what we're able to do with that is essentially just create a vector database, or you can tap into you can hydrate an API, which will allow your AI agent to use the VAPI tools. And I'll show you guys how to set that up as well. It's actually really simple. You don't even have to set it up. Claude can actually do it for you. We place the calls through VAPI, so that is the AI that we're gonna use to be able to make the phone calls, get the transcripts, the analysis, and all that. And so when the call ends, we analyze the transcripts with Claude. We classify the outcomes into one of 12 categories, and then we post a professional note back to AMS or back on that spreadsheet. So when the agent looks at it, they can actually refer to the spreadsheet to see what actions actually took place. Did we leave a voicemail? Did somebody actually answer the phone? Did we resolve it? The crazy thing is, this whole thing runs from a single command. So the part that really makes this usable is the decision engine. This is the logic that runs before we ever make a dial, and this is what's really the bread and butter, right? So first, we check the agent's notes in the column. This would be like the agent would have a separate column with their own notes. We're actually able to discern the intent from the notes that you leave in that spreadsheet. Since it's set up on a weekly basis, we have our processes, and this is why it's so important to define SOPs in your company. So that way you can say, hey, every Wednesday I need to update my sheet so that this AI agent, right, if I'm going to take advantage of it, knows it can have the context before it makes the calls. But if you guys aren't actually executing the SOPs, that's more of a leadership and a management problem. And it's something that you guys should actually look into prior to building stuff like this. So it's really important to do some kind of critical thinking, some kind of reasoning, and really map out and define the processes that your company needs to adhere to so that you can harness things like this moving forward in the future. So secondly, we check Supabase call history by policy number. That's kind of the unique identifier that we use. And this is a cross-week deduplication because it's a rolling 45 days. There's going to be weeks, obviously, where the policies still exist week over week over week until the tail end of that 45 days when that pending business falls off. And so we have rules for each one of the callable columns. So if the client agreed to pay or they accepted an AOTA offer, this is weighted at its highest level, meaning it takes priority. It's a permanent skip. The agent owns it now, right? An AOTA is simply approved other than applied, or OTAF, right? Or just basically they got approved. There's a new amount that we need to quote the client. They just need to agree to it and maybe sign some documents from the carrier. And so our AI can't sign anything, but it can make that priority and make sure that the agent follows up, whether it be a phone call to the agent, a Slack message to the agent, you name it, right? If the client confirms that they're comfortable, we just give it a nice cool down. It's good to go. And we have one touch point where prior to that, we didn't have any touch point to the clients. And that's when they start to feel uneasy, especially if you're not doing a lot of same day pays where we're collecting the payment and drafting the policy the same day we sold it. In final expense, it's very, very common to move that first payment out, 15, 30, I mean, as far as they can to match up with their social security. And so what happens is they never actually get the policy in the mail, especially if the carrier that you're writing them with doesn't actually mail policies out. Some of them don't. I mean, take RNA, for example. They actually will not mail the policy out. You have to call RNA and then ask them to mail the policy out. Maybe your agency mails things like refrigerator magnets or thank you cards. things like that. And that's why those are so important in this business. If we leave a voicemail on an IP return case, that's a 3-day cadence before we call them back. If we leave a voicemail on a check-in case, meaning they didn't answer the call, but at least we still were able to say, hey, just calling in and check on their policy. Nothing's wrong. We want to make sure that they heard that message and we care enough to call them. And that actually will help lift your place rate as well. Third, we check our AMS live or the spreadsheet or whatever you need to check. We're checking it to make sure if it's already in force, if it's already placed, if it's already paid, we skip it and we log it. The sheet becomes stale, right? There's no point in calling someone whose coverage is active. And so you got to make sure to take all the precautions to make sure that we're not double calling clients where they're getting a phone call from an agent and then they're getting a phone call from an AI agent, especially if our life insurance agent has already taken care of an IP return. Now that we went through the logic to decide whether or not to make a phone call and make a dial, let me explain to you guys and walk you through what actually happens on a phone call. So Arya introduces herself as the agency about the client's policy. She's trained to sound natural. So in VAPI, I can share with you guys in the link here my exact prompt that I'm using. And then it references the carrier, the policy by the last 4 digits of the policy number, not the entire policy number. For IP return cases, she explains that the payment came back and asks, if the client would like to update their payment information or just to be connected directly to the carrier's payment line. For awaiting funds cases, this is new policies that have been submitted, they've been issued and approved, and their first payment is out, till next month. Basically, we just explain that the policy hasn't drafted yet. There's no financial obligations at this point. It does a pre-warm, pre-draft check-in, making sure that the client knows, right? Really important, making sure that they understand there is a draft coming, how much the amount is for the draft, and the date that the draft is set, okay, on their end. For AOTA cases, which is again approved other than applied, Aria reads the carrier's modified language directly. So we do have a back office team that actually updates the statuses. So what was submitted, and then they turn it into what the new offer is. And so we can actually reference that and explain the new price. Regardless if they agree to that or not, we're going to transfer all AOTAs directly to our agent who wrote that policy. If the AI reaches a voicemail, we're going to leave a message with a callback number read twice. Really important, guys. We're going to leave the callback number for the agent who wrote the policy, and we're going to read that number off twice in the voicemail if they have any questions, okay? Every single call gets recorded, and the transcripts are also stored. All of our outcomes are classified, and this is completely independent to VAPI or any other subscription services, right? And this is really important, especially if you're worried about HIPAA compliance and things of that nature. Here's a quick little bonus section. We can actually build out a dashboard, which is very simple to do because we've done it so many times that it's just the same process over and over again. So we go from transcript, right? Claude kind of analyzes it. We categorize the outcome. We log it into Supabase. We leave a note in any AMS or CRM. And then we also do a Slack or transfer the call via Dialpad or whatever Ring Central service, you would use. And so we're able to log this into a UI. And so here's what the UI, looks like. And this is just the cases tab, but overview, call log, agents, history, finance. These are all live tabs. I don't want to go through all of this because it's real data and I have to be careful about what gets exposed on here, right? But history, if I click on history, it'll give you the call history, the outcomes. And then if you look at notes, you can also leave a note. And then when you post it, if you do have an external link to an AMS or a website that you use to monitor your back office business, you can actually post the notes as well just from this UI, and this is all custom built, right? We also house the transcripts, so if I go back into history and click view, you can see the transcripts here. It even captures the voicemail transcripts, and on a different tab, there's a play button where you can actually listen to the call live and exactly what happened on the call. So what is this actually costing your company? And I'm going to break down what the ROI actually looks like here, and we're going to go over the exposure math, the real cost of everything, how much annual and real opportunity cost is there, and what actually changes the equation. So if we're looking at 200 IP returns in a single month, $75 is, the average monthly cost. That's about $180,000 of AP at risk. And if you're recovering, let's say 60% of that manually, you're losing $72,000 a year to lapsed policies. That's real cash flow that your company is surrendering by choice. And the real cost is really lost production. So an agent that's working those 200 IP returns, manually dialing, sifting through, notes in an AMS spreadsheet without an actual cadence, that's roughly 7 days per week of work, honestly. But what really matters is what they're not doing during those 7 days. So at 8 leads per day, right? They close at 20%, 1.6 closes per day, 75% place rate on those. $1,200 average annual premium, right? That's 1.2 places per day. And at an average, they're at like 720 per day in commissions that they're costing you. So add up the IP returns that get missed with the 40% loss rate, that's another 30K in lapse premium. And you're just looking at 90K annually as far as the real opportunity cost, not even in the labor hours, but in deals that didn't close and premium that had lapsed. With Aria, 100 plus calls placed in 2 hours. No agents need to get pulled off the phone. No agents need to get burned out on this. The agent stays on the phone, closing deals, right, at their 20% conversion rate. And conservatively, ARIA really recovers about 55% of those cases. So 110 policies per month that may be at risk to lapse. 50% of that is like roughly 49,000 in recovered annually. So you're essentially getting $288,000 by saving your agents the time and the headache of dealing with that, but you're also recovering that cash flow that got bottlenecked from the IP returns. And so when Area handles a conversation, your agent gets to stay in production, right? You get more time in production. AOTA cases actually get hit, they actually get approved. New placements get, you get an increase in your place rate overall, and hopefully your persistency as well. You'll get a much higher cash flow month over month, and then you can keep your agents on the phone selling. So let's take a look at what, right, the end-to-end process of what all this looks like. Okay, phone's ringing. Speaking.
Hi, James. This is Julie calling from Michael's office. I am calling because Michael recently helped you set up your American Amicable life insurance coverage, and we just wanted to make sure everything arrived properly and you are all squared away. Do you have just a quick minute?
Yes, I'd actually like to change my draft date.
Oh, got it. So you want to make sure the payment lines up with when you get paid. That makes total sense. Based on what I have, your payment is set for July 15th, 2026. Does that work with your schedule, or would you like to push it to a date that lines up better?
I'd like to push it to a date that lines up better. Let's go for July 20th.
Absolutely. July 20th, that's perfect. The quickest way to get that locked in right now is to connect you directly to American Amicable's team. They can pull up your account and update that draft date on the spot. Want me to do that?
Yes.
Transferring the call now.
How convenient. I get an Amber Alert. So it transferred me to the billing department for American Amicable. And as you can see, we do have the transcript as well. And so this is what actually gets stored in Supabase. Who is this for, right? This is really built for independent distribution. If you're with an IMO, a BGA, if you're using Google Sheets for pending business management, you can plug into the system. If your AMS has an API, if it doesn't, right, if you're, again, in Google Sheets or something like that, we can post the notes automatically. If you're on a different platform, the architecture is literally the same. The only thing that changes is the endpoint, which you will define. So this system is production ready. It's running on real cases with real clients and logging to real AMS systems today. If you want to see it running on your book, or if you have something you're building that's similar, or just want to talk through the architecture, links are in the description below. Thanks for watching.